When we think about the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it's meant to honor the game's very best, the players who defined eras, changed how football was played, and left legacies that fans will never forget. But not every legend has received their rightful place in Canton. Today, we're counting down 10 incredible players who still haven't been inducted into the Hall of Fame, even though their resumes are stacked with accolades, records, and unforgettable moments. Stick around until number 1, because you'll be shocked who's still waiting. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your Hall of Fame snubs below. And if you like this, check out our last video, which had another 10 players who got snubbed. When people talk about great offensive linemen of the 1990s, Steve Wisniewski's name deserves to be in that conversation more often. Nicknamed the Wiz, he spent his entire 13-year career with the Los Angeles and later Oakland Raiders from 1989 until 2001. During that time, he was one of the most reliable and respected guards in football, consistently bringing toughness and discipline to a position that rarely gets glory. Wisniewski was selected to the Pro Bowl 8 times, an incredible feat for a guard, and was named a first-team All-Pro twice. Those honors alone should have him in stronger Hall of Fame discussions. Guards often get overlooked because their contributions don't show up on highlight reels or stat sheets. But Wisniewski was the kind of lineman who made an offense function smoothly. He excelled at both pass protection and run blocking, keeping Raider quarterbacks upright while opening lanes for a revolving door of running backs. Durability is another aspect of his case. He started 206 games across his career, missing very little time in an era where offensive linemen routinely played through pain. That kind of longevity combined with consistent excellence makes him one of the best guards of his generation. The Raiders of the 90s weren't consistent contenders, but Wisniewski was one of the few bright spots and a leader in the locker room. Compared to Hall of Fame guards like Randall McDaniel or Will Shields, Wisniewski's resume holds up remarkably well. He didn't win a Super Bowl, which may work against him, but his career accomplishments show he was on that elite tier. Linemen with fewer Pro Bowl appearances and less consistency have gotten the nod before him. Ultimately, Steve Wisniewski is a classic example of an overlooked offensive lineman. His dominance, longevity, and accolades check every box that the Hall of Fame should be looking for. The Raiders have a long history of legendary players, and Wisniewski deserves to stand alongside them in Canton. When it comes to all-purpose production, very few players in NFL history can measure up to Brian Mitchell. Despite never being a household superstar, Mitchell quietly carved out one of the most impressive resumes the league has ever seen, and yet he's still not in the Hall of Fame. Mitchell played 14 seasons in the NFL, primarily as a return specialist, but also contributing as a running back. Over the course of his career, he piled up more than 23,000 all-purpose yards, which ranks second in NFL history, trailing only Jerry Rice. Think about that. In a league full of Hall of Fame wide receivers and running backs, Mitchell finished his career with more total yardage than nearly everyone except the greatest receiver of all time. His ability as a return man was legendary. He racked up over 14,000 return yards and scored 9 touchdowns on special teams, flipping field position and creating momentum time and time again. Coaches and teammates valued him because he turned kickoffs and punts, often overlooked phases of the game, into game-changing plays. Beyond just the numbers, Mitchell was remarkably durable. He played in 223 games, missing very little time despite handling one of the most physically punishing roles in football. His consistency was unmatched, producing at a high level from his rookie year in 1990 until his retirement in 2003. The argument against him is that he wasn't a traditional star at running back or wide receiver, but the Hall of Fame is supposed to represent the totality of the game, and special teams is 1/3 of football. If Devin Hester, rightfully, earned his bust as the most electrifying returner, then Brian Mitchell should follow as the most productive one. Mitchell's combination of longevity, production, and impact on field position make him one of the greatest return specialists in history. His exclusion from Canton is a glaring oversight, and it's time voters give him the recognition he deserves. When fans talk about dominant offensive tackles, names like Jonathan Ogden, Walter Jones, and Orlando Pace immediately come up, and rightfully so, as they're all enshrined in Canton. But one name that belongs in the same conversation is Willie Anderson, a mountain of a man who spent most of his career protecting quarterbacks and bulldozing defenders for the Cincinnati Bengals. Drafted 10th overall in 1996, Anderson became the Bengals' starting right tackle and held that spot for over a decade. He played 13 seasons in the NFL, 12 with Cincinnati and 1 with Baltimore, starting 184 games. At 6 feet 5 inches and 340 pounds, Anderson combined size, strength, and surprising agility to dominate the edge. Anderson's accolades speak for themselves. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler and earned 3 first-team All-Pro selections. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, he was widely regarded as the best right tackle in football. That's significant because right tackles often get overlooked compared to left tackles, who are seen as more glamorous for protecting the blind side. But Anderson redefined the role, neutralizing elite pass rushers and paving the way for productive rushing attacks. What makes Anderson's case even stronger is the context. He played much of his prime on Bengals teams that struggled mightily, rarely making the playoffs. Despite the lack of national spotlight, Anderson's dominance was acknowledged by players, coaches, and analysts who consistently rated him among the best linemen of his era. Consider this, during the peak of his career, elite pass rushers like Michael Strahan and Jason Taylor praised Anderson as one of the toughest matchups they ever faced. That kind of respect from Hall of Fame defenders tells you everything you need to know about his quality of play. The Hall of Fame has historically been slow to recognize offensive linemen, particularly right tackles, but the game doesn't function without them. Willie Anderson's consistency, dominance, and accolades put him firmly in Hall of Fame territory. His omission isn't just a snub, it's a reflection of how overlooked right tackles have been in football history. It's time for that to change. Few players in NFL history embody durability, consistency, and production like London Fletcher. Undrafted in 1998 out of Division III John Carroll University, Fletcher entered the league with little fanfare. Yet over the course of 16 seasons, he carved out one of the most impressive careers ever for a linebacker. And somehow, he's still waiting on his Hall of Fame call. Fletcher's resume is staggering. He played in 256 consecutive games, starting 215 straight at middle linebacker. He literally never missed a game in 16 years, a feat almost unheard of for such a physically demanding position. That Ironman streak alone should raise eyebrows in Canton. But Fletcher wasn't just reliable. He was productive at an elite level. He recorded more than 2,000 career tackles, placing him among the all-time leaders. Season after season, he was the heartbeat of his defense, whether it was the Rams, Bills, or Washington. His football IQ and leadership allowed him to quarterback defenses and make plays sideline to sideline. While he only made 4 Pro Bowls, those honors don't tell the whole story. He was often overshadowed by bigger-name linebackers of his era, Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher, and Derek Brooks, all of whom are rightfully in the Hall. But Fletcher's consistency over such a long span is arguably just as impressive. Unlike some stars who had short bursts of dominance, Fletcher was producing high tackle numbers and leading defenses for well over a decade. He was also a Super Bowl champion, playing a key role in the St. Louis Rams' 1999 Greatest Show on Turf season. That ring proves his impact extended beyond stats. He contributed to winning at the highest level. The biggest knock on Fletcher is that he was never seen as the best linebacker in any single season. But the Hall of Fame should honor not just peaks, but careers of remarkable consistency and durability. By that measure, Fletcher's 16 years of excellence put him firmly in Hall of Fame territory. His omission so far is one of the most glaring examples of how overlooked players without flashy reputations can be. When you think about toughness, reliability, and clutch performances at wide receiver, Hines Ward is the first name that comes to mind. Over 14 seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ward became the franchise's all-time leader in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. Despite those numbers, and a Super Bowl MVP to his name, he still hasn't been inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Ward's numbers stack up with many Hall of Famers. He finished his career with 1,000 receptions, 12,080 83 receiving yards and 85 touchdowns. At the time of his retirement in 2011, he ranked among the top 10 in both catches and yards. That level of production, paired with his longevity, should warrant a gold jacket, but Ward brought more than just stats. He was the emotional leader of the Steelers during their 2000 dynasty, a two-time Super Bowl champion and MVP of Super Bowl 40. His gritty style set the tone for Pittsburgh's offense. Unlike many receivers, Ward was celebrated as one of the best blocking wideouts in NFL history. Defensive players hated lining up across from him because he was just as likely to level a linebacker on a running play as he was to haul in a third down catch. That physicality made him unique, and it also defined what it meant to be a Steeler. His relentless energy and toughness embodied the blue-collar culture of Pittsburgh. Ward's highlight reel isn't just full of touchdowns. It's also full of crushing blocks that sprung teammates for big plays. The argument against him is that he wasn't as flashy or athletically dominant as other wideouts. But the Hall of Fame should represent more than flash. It should represent impact, leadership, and complete players. Ward checked every one of those boxes. When you consider his production, his championships, his toughness, and his iconic role as the face of the Steelers' offense for over a decade, Hines Ward's absence from Canton is baffling. He wasn't just a great wide receiver, he redefined what the position could be. Fred Taylor may be one of the most underrated running backs in NFL history. Spending the majority of his 13-year career with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Taylor was the face of the franchise for over a decade, carrying the offense through consistency and power. Despite finishing among the top 20 all-time in rushing yards, he still hasn't received his long-overdue Hall of Fame recognition. Taylor's numbers are nothing short of impressive. He rushed for 11,695 yards, which ranks 17th all-time, and added nearly 2,400 receiving yards for over 14,000 total yards from scrimmage. He scored 70 total touchdowns and posted 7 1,000-yard rushing seasons. Those statistics put him in the company of Hall of Famers, yet Taylor's name rarely comes up in the conversation. What made Taylor special was his blend of size and speed. At 6 feet 1 inch and 230 pounds, he could run through defenders, but he also possessed breakaway speed. His 62 career runs of 20-plus yards highlight his ability to turn routine plays into explosive gains. Defenses had to respect his big play threat on every snap. Taylor also stepped up in big games. In his rookie season in 1998, he rushed for 1,223 yards and 14 touchdowns, helping the Jaguars reach the AFC Championship. In 1999, his 90-yard touchdown run against Miami in the playoffs remains one of the signature moments in franchise history. The main knock against him has been durability early in his career, as he missed chunks of time due to injuries. But he overcame that label, playing until age 34 and showing remarkable longevity for a running back. His consistency over more than a decade separates him from many backs with shorter peaks. Part of Taylor's Hall of Fame struggle is playing for a small market team that lacked the spotlight of traditional powerhouses, but his production speaks for itself. He was every bit as dominant as contemporaries who have already been enshrined. Fred Taylor deserves his bust in Canton. His size, speed, production, and longevity make him one of the greatest running backs of his generation, and the Hall of Fame isn't complete until he gets his due. When the conversation turns to great pass rushers, Leslie O'Neal is often left out, and that's a mistake. Over 13 NFL seasons, primarily with the San Diego Chargers, O'Neal built a resume that should put him squarely in the Hall of Fame discussion. With 132.5 career sacks, he sits comfortably among the top 15 in NFL history, yet remains on the outside looking in. O'Neal burst onto the scene as the 1986 NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, recording 12.5 5 sacks in his first season. Unfortunately, a devastating knee injury derailed his next 2 years. Many thought his career might never recover, but O'Neal came back stronger and more consistent than ever, proving his resilience. From 1989 onward, O'Neal became one of the league's most reliable sack artists. He recorded double-digit sacks in 7 different seasons and led the Chargers in sacks nearly every year he played for them. His ability to pressure the quarterback was a cornerstone of San Diego's defense throughout the late 80s and early 90s. He wasn't just a pass rusher either. O'Neal finished his career with 736 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 24 forced fumbles. He was disruptive in every phase of the game and routinely demanded double teams, which freed up opportunities for his teammates. O'Neal earned 6 Pro Bowl selections and was named first-team All-Pro twice. Those accolades put him in line with many other defensive linemen who are already in Canton. The difference? O'Neal didn't play for perennial contenders. The Chargers were inconsistent during much of his career, and a lack of playoff exposure likely kept his name from being elevated to legendary status. Still, his career production is undeniable. Players with fewer sacks and less longevity have already earned gold jackets. O'Neal's mix of early dominance, mid-career resilience, and long-term consistency makes his exclusion from the Hall a glaring oversight. Leslie O'Neal was one of the premier edge defenders of his generation. The numbers, the accolades, and the respect he earned from opponents all point to one conclusion: he deserves a bust in Canton. When you think about the glory days of Washington football in the 1980s and early 1990s, you think of Super Bowls, smash-mouth running, and one of the most feared offensive lines in NFL history: the Hogs. At the center of it all was Joe Jacoby, a massive, powerful left tackle who spent his entire 13-year career protecting quarterbacks and paving the way for running backs. Despite his critical role in 3 Super Bowl championships, Jacoby still hasn't earned a spot in the Hall of Fame. Jacoby joined Washington in 1981 as an undrafted free agent, and few could have predicted the career that would follow. At 6 feet 7 inches and nearly 300 pounds, he brought rare size and mobility to the offensive line. Over his career, he played in 170 games and started 148, becoming the cornerstone of Washington's front 5. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler and earned 3 first-team All-Pro selections, anchoring an offensive line that dominated some of the league's best defenses. Washington won 3 Super Bowls during Jacoby's tenure, and his ability to neutralize elite pass rushers was a huge part of that success. Perhaps Jacoby's most famous performance came in Super Bowl 27, when Washington's offensive line steamrolled Miami's defense to set up John Riggins' legendary 43-yard touchdown run. That play, one of the most iconic in Super Bowl history, happened because of the holes Jacoby and the Hogs created. The biggest reason Jacoby has been overlooked is the nature of his position. Offensive linemen rarely get individual recognition, and being part of a line that spread the credit among multiple players may have hurt his case. But Jacoby wasn't just another Hog. He was the leader, the left tackle, the most difficult and important assignment. In a league that enshrines quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers who benefited from dominant lines, it's only fair that the men who made it possible get recognized too. Joe Jacoby wasn't just good, he was a dynasty builder, and until he's enshrined in Canton, the Hall of Fame is missing one of the game's true foundational pieces. If the Hall of Fame is truly supposed to represent every part of the game, then Steve Tasker's exclusion is one of its biggest oversights. Tasker wasn't a star wide receiver, running back, or quarterback. He was a special teams ace, widely regarded as the greatest of all time in that role. For over a decade with the Buffalo Bills, Tasker transformed special teams from an afterthought into a weapon. Tasker spent 12 of his 13 NFL seasons in Buffalo, becoming a fan favorite and a coach's dream because of his ability to change games on kickoffs and punts. He played in 220 career games, making play after play in one of football's most physical and unforgiving phases. His accolades are staggering for a special teams player. 7 Pro Bowls and 5 first-team All-Pro selections. That's virtually unheard of for someone whose primary contributions came in kick coverage and returns. He wasn't just good for his position, he was so dominant that opponents had to adjust their blocking schemes to account for him. Tasker's impact was most visible during Buffalo's historic run of 4 straight Super Bowl appearances in the early 1990s. While Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, and Bruce Smith got most of the headlines, Tasker's relentless energy and knack for big plays often swung momentum. Coaches and teammates repeatedly called him the best gunner they'd ever seen. The biggest knock against Tasker is that he wasn't a full-time starter at a traditional position, but that argument misses the point. Football is a game of 3 phases: offense, defense, and special teams. If someone can be the very best ever at one of those phases, shouldn't that merit Canton consideration? Devin Hester's induction in 2024 opened the door for specialists, and Tasker should be next. At the end of the day, Steve Tasker's case is simple. He wasn't just a great special teamer, he was the great special teamer. His 7 Pro Bowls, his longevity, and his role in a dynasty prove his worth. The Hall of Fame shouldn't ignore a player who perfected 1/3 of the game. When you talk about running backs who changed the way the position is played, Roger Craig's name should be at the very top. As the engine of the San Francisco 49ers offense during their dynasty years, Craig was more than just a runner. He was a revolutionary weapon who redefined versatility at the position. And yet, despite all his accolades and innovations, he still hasn't been enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Craig's most famous accomplishment came in 1985, when he became the first player in NFL history to record 1,000 rushing and 1,000 receiving yards in the same season. That feat showcased his dual threat ability, something that has since become a benchmark for modern running backs like Marshall Faulk and Christian McCaffrey. But Craig did it first and set the standard decades ago. Over his 11-year career, Craig rushed for more than 8,000 yards, added over 4,900 receiving yards, and scored 73 total touchdowns. He earned 4 Pro Bowl selections and was a first-team All-Pro in 1988 when he helped lead the 49ers to yet another Super Bowl title. Speaking of Super Bowls, Craig was a 3-time champion, contributing to one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history. He wasn't just along for the ride either, he was central to Bill Walsh's West Coast offense. His ability to run precise routes out of the backfield opened up passing lanes for Joe Montana and later Steve Young, while his physical, upright running style punished defenders on the ground. Craig's playoff resume is equally impressive. He scored 7 postseason touchdowns, including 3 in Super Bowl 19, helping the 49ers dominate the Miami Dolphins. Few players in NFL history can claim to have been such a consistent producer on the biggest stage. The case against Craig is that his career totals, while strong, aren't as gaudy as some Hall of Fame backs, but his impact goes beyond numbers. He was the prototype for the modern all-purpose running back, blending rushing and receiving in ways that shaped offensive football for decades. Simply put, Roger Craig was ahead of his time. He was a winner, an innovator, and a champion. Canton is incomplete without him. And there you have it. 10 legendary players who still don't have a bust in Canton, even though their resumes and impact on the game speak for themselves. From overlooked linemen to versatile running backs and special teams greats, these guys helped shape NFL history, and their absence from the Hall of Fame is one of football's biggest mysteries. Which of these players do you think deserves the call most? Let us know in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more deep dives into football's forgotten legends. And check out our last Hall of Fame snub video that is on your screen now.